So the fourth segment, second to last, since I did two of the first missions combined in a segment, we find ourselves on a mountain. And there's some pretty cool things that I want to point out here, like the wind and blizzard potential elemental condition on a battlefield. I would be shocked if this entire area was made, or all the elements going into it were made simply for this story sequence. And even things about the Tenno here, if they were only made for this story sequence, I would be shocked, and I'll get to more of that in a second. This kind of dynamic, shoveling of snow as you move through it, the wind blowing you. I actually was fighting the stick, or players will find themselves fighting the movement that the wind is trying to impart upon you with their WASD keys. You can even see it here, that the wind is trying to blow you off this snow bridge, and those would be some pretty cool elements to see on tile sets moving forward, on missions, sortie conditions moving forward, alert conditions, and I just would be shocked if a lot of these elements didn't translate into future gameplay, if not sooner. And so here is another one that I might skip ahead a bit. I didn't in the last one. This one might be a bit easier to skip ahead with. We start to find out more details about Teshin being a Dax, being under control of the Grineer Queens. I like that it's not... So, there were kind of theories of him being controlled on forums, on Reddit, and I don't think anybody quite hit this mark where he seems to still have free will. He still seems to be completely in control of himself, except for when his master goes. And I think that is a pretty cool element by comparison to, I was just completely under their control, it sucked, and he's almost kind of accepting of, like, this is the way things are, and it blows, but I'm trying to help you while also, kind of trying to kill you because I'm being controlled, and it's the Orokin's fault, and the Grineer Queens suck too. I think that's a better through line than just he's completely under control, and him being here kind of made it a bit more fitting. Now, it's a bit tropey, this section, like the samurai master and the pupil must venture into the cave to find himself and come to greater enlightenment, or go through Goku training to become Dragon Ball Z more powerful in 10 episodes. It's a bit tropey, but for some reason, like if it was, a thing that happened in a movie or a thing that happened in a show these days, I would mostly just be like, fine, but I'm not really that happy with it. But for some reason here in Warframe, it just fits. I don't know why. I not only said that in the recording that didn't work for this one, but I'm also saying that, right here, right now. So I've had time to sleep on it, to think about it, and I still can't tell you why I find this kind of tropey, now, you're going into a cave and you're going to become more powerful when on the other side of it. It just works for some reason here, and I wouldn't mind hearing from other people what they think about this section, possibly finding some thoughts I didn't on it. Another part here is the upcoming Ayatan mechanism, that Ayatan wasn't just these little ornate statues that we just go and collect. It actually has more purpose than that, and there it is. It's actually quite large, and that's not going in my ship, or at least not until I get a better ship. And yeah, it gives it more depth. It makes it kind of this mechanism for moving forward within the War Within story. So another element that kind of... So I touched on this earlier, and this is where I kind of start to wonder how the Tenno is going to function, and I haven't played since I played the story. I want to get these videos up. But I'm going to be curious to see how the Tenno functions in missions now. Is it going to play... Are we going to kind of almost be these two separate entities playing together at the same time? I'm okay with that concept. However, because basically you end up separating from your Warframe, and then you play as the Tenno, while the Warframe kind of just stands there, and maybe eventually the Warframe will have Spectre AI, where, you know, as the Tenno becomes more powerful, he's able to control both, but the Warframe becomes AI controlled while you move about the field with the Tenno. But again, I think this is more of a division from 2-in-1, you know, this concept of two entities trying to act as one, where it's just these are two entities still. I posted a fan concept about half a year ago to the Warframe forums, where I tried to give that concept a bit more connection between the Tenno and Warframe when it comes to focus. And I feel like, personally, that this kind of, again, leads us away from 2-in-1 as opposed to just two. And I think there could stand to be a bit more unity with that. Focus is, you know, still tagged as a beta system, so I wouldn't be shocked if Focus just gets completely rehauled, and of course saving some of the preferred passives, potentially spreading them out across all the schools, like energy building, buildup of energy. Zenuric is probably one of the most preferred schools because you build energy, 4 energy per second, which is huge. Maybe not each school would have 4 energy per second, but perhaps there could be another benefit to balance that. So, like, Zenuric gets 4 energy per second and plus 10% range, period, to all Warframes once you have met a particular amount of upgrades. I'm gonna get eaten here. And say, so like, then you look at Naramon, still has Shadow Step, gets 2 energy per second, but gets an additional 20% in duration, let's say. Interesting concept. Here, again, we kind of start these trials, start to learn about our Tenno. I might skip ahead again to really get through it. You basically get Tenno melee power, you get a Tenno... you still have the beam. You'll basically get the beam back over time. You have... What do you have? You have the dash, and you have this cloaking ability. So there's a few things to unpack there, obviously. One, if we... So you end up fighting against one of the queens and her guards, I believe they're called Kuva Guardians, or guards. I should probably look their name up before I do the next recording. And you use a lot of your Tenno powers. And that makes sense, but does that translate into continued gameplay within the game? Is our Tenno going to get out of the Warframe and use these powers on a regular old mission, on a survival, on a mobile defense, on a spy? Is the Tenno going to allow us to take the ability or the opportunity to get eaten by an Orokin worm thing? No, that's not it. Is the Tenno going to allow us to take more Warframes on spies? Of course, we have the liberty to take whatever frame we want on a spy, but of course there are more that are simply more effective. Cloaking, teleporting, what have you, these abilities to just help you get through spy missions, spy vaults, and I think that having that opportunity would be pretty darn cool. Outside of that, though, I can't help but wonder if there's any amount of scaling with these abilities, because if they don't, then obviously if you have to face enemies that require you to be the Tenno, be the operator on the battlefield, then if you have to face these enemies that you had to use your Tenno powers on to beat them in endless missions, if your operator doesn't scale, then that's a bit of a problem. So I'll be very curious to find out about that today. I might actually do another recording about kind of my experience of other stuff within the War Within update. Yeah, outside of that, I'm just going to skip a bit forward, so don't mind the jumping here. Here's a portion that I would say I'm happy with and a bit disappointed with at the same time. You kind of start to learn about what happened on the Zariman 10-0. Choices that kind of defined you and seem to that you choose here and will potentially define you moving forward, or maybe define your game comparatively to other players' games moving forward. It's tough to really say. And you could clearly kind of start to see that these were choices. Basically, there was you'd select a choice, and there'd be this little compass, and it would kind of show daytime for one choice, kind of a divide between dark and white or black and white, and then a nighttime kind of scenery on the compass, obviously delineating, I think that's the proper use of the word, probably not, basically showing that this choice is light, this choice is neutral, this choice is dark. Again, a couple of things to unpack here. Choice, for the few that have followed me, like on 0 frames per second, I've talked about how I'm just not the biggest fan of choice in storytelling. I want to be told a story, and I think cohesive stories are more easily told when there isn't choice in the way, and oftentimes these choices still lead us towards these one or two conclusions. I'm going to die a couple times here, so this gives us the opportunity to continue to talk about choice in the game. Actually, I'm just going to jump it forward because it's kind of just boring. Here, I'll die, though. So before we get back to choices, and before we get back to the Zariman 10-0, I think it is worth noting here that controller gameplay was not working. And that was a bit of a frustration, and for those who might prefer controller over mouse and keyboard, like I do, then this, this part might be a bit of a hindrance. I used the keyboard in conjunction with the controller to clear the section, and eventually I think even just use some mouse and keyboard play to get through particular parts. So, back to choice. I think that choice within... Yeah, this is me actually trying to figure out what the controls are on controller, and just realizing that I probably should try to utilize the keyboard. So that will come up here shortly. I get eaten again. Fantastic. And... so, choice, Ramble Entertainment. I mean, it's in the name, guys, if you're having an issue with my rambling. There's the teleport. So, choice in Warframe makes complete sense. Almost in a way that it doesn't with other games, where you don't have as much opportunity to change and to make choices. And that's cool. But how these will impact us and how it will impact the story, I am quite curious about. Will we have to wait until we see the next story? Is it going to be a case of we're not going to be able to alter our choices. And I think that's a big deal, because in a game where you alter what you do, what you wear, the way you look, the weapons you equip, the way the weapons and the Warframes interact with each other, and the Warframes interact with other Warframes, and the ability to always be malleable with those options, I think that making stringent choice paths where you can't go back or you can't change them would be a detriment. I don't think it would be wise, and I think giving us the opportunity to change decisions we make, moving forward into future storytelling, or just to go back and change some of the choices so that the game acts differently. Full spoilers, I killed one of the queens at the end, or at least I didn't. I asked Teshin to, because they were controlling him, and I feel like he deserved that kind of retribution, that justice. And so, yeah, I'm a bit leery. Cool, it makes sense, but I'm a bit leery about it. The Zariman 10-0. So, you learn more about it in this sequence through some kind of energy, visual imagery. I would have liked almost a cutscene for what happened on the Zariman 10-0 after kind of coming to a conclusion with all of these energy imageries, memories that you seem to reconnect with. And yeah, I just would have loved to have a bit more visualization of what happened on that ship, as opposed to just kind of some more echoes, some more lines. Right here is about where we're going to end and go into the final part 5 for the commentary. I hear Teshin get cut off there, so that's a line I'm looking forward to on a replay, figuring out what was said there. But yeah, I enjoyed these trials. I think one of the final things to touch on is that this section is probably going to be decently polarizing amongst the Warframe community, especially amongst those who say things like, that's not Warframe, where, you know, they have this expectation that it's just always murder, not scanning plants, not really, you know, not really anything that doesn't have to do with the majority of the gameplay. I obviously disagree. I talked about that in one of the earlier videos, I think, if not I'm talking about now. And that's fine. We're allowed to have those divides, and I think they're just fine. It's just that, yeah, this gameplay experience was very much not... So I don't want to say this wasn't not Warframe, because it is. Obviously there's Tenno, obviously there's Roken things going on, obviously Teshin's talking to us in the background. It's just that this isn't how we're used to experiencing our stories. I think it was cool to step away, to see what DE could do with a lot of what they've learned in their development process, and just to step outside the box. I think there were a lot of cool elements stepping outside the box here. So let's go ahead and get into the final part, the final recording. Oh, and if you liked, do the thing. Thanks for watching.